Hello, beloved. This is Lainie Love beaming in with the Power of Transformational Retreats series. And I am so thrilled to have my beloved soul sister, Laura Hollick, here today, the founder of Soul Art and somebody who I've been journeying with for a long time in deeply sacred ways and in transformational retreat space. And she holds an international retreat day, mostly every year, International Soul Art Day, and also has some incredible intimate retreats as well that she takes people through. So I'm really excited to add her voice here into the conversation. So welcome, beloved.
Thank you. I'm so happy to talk about this. It's such an important topic, really, like creating sacred spaces for magic to happen. And we so need this in the world. And I mean, I go to retreats, I like leading retreats, but I love that we're going into conversation about this.
Thank you. Yeah. And one of the things that I love about your work and about retreats in general is that it creates these vortexes of energy and power that we're really able to step into and really amplifies all that we're creating, all that we're moving through, all that we're healing, all that we're intending. And so it's just this real portal to change, true change. And so I'm curious to sort of start off the conversation of, what do you really feel is essential in creating truly transformative retreat experiences?
Yeah, I think it starts with, for myself, having like a divine directive. Like, what's it for? Like what is, if I'm going to create a space, I have to feel like I want to be in that space, that there's some divine directive for the purpose of it. And, whenever I'm going into something, I always tune in, like, what is this really about? Why do I want to do this? Why do I want to put energy into this? Because I kind of see it like, it's like creating a womb of creation, right? And so if I'm the one who's creating it and I'm using kind of, the womb energetics that I have to work with, then that's using my energy to do it. And I need to feel like I'm like all in with it. Like I'm like a channel for it. I'm like the mother for it. I'm there for it. So I think for me, the essential piece initially is, what is the divine directive? What is asking me to do this? Where's my soul synced up to be fully 100% into this thing? And then when that happens, it can kind of, now you got a guide for it, and it can kind of come together. The energy is there for it.
I love that. And that feels so spot on. That's one of the things we're going to be diving into on Friday, actually, in our Revolutionary Retreats free event. And, this idea of having that clear intent, that clear purpose, that clear directive to be able to start to shape and mold the container that is wanting to come together with this constellation of beings, and really honoring the power of being the mother, the steward, the one who is the compassionate space holder, which is actually one of the archetypes that we're going to be going into as well on Friday, to be able to truly hold that and steward that in a good way to create the transformation. Because without that container, without that womb space, that true transformation isn't possible, right? It's like getting our bodies, getting our nervous systems, getting everything aligned and in tuned to be able to provide that change. So I'm curious for you. I know you've had quite some experiences during retreats that you've led, and I'm curious, what is the sort of one of your most profound moments as a retreat leader that you have had and gone through that has also changed you, right? Because often when we're setting out to do transformational retreats, they work us too. We get transformed, we get alchemized in the process. So I'm wondering for you, what's a story or two that you might want to share about how you've been changed by what you've set out to lead and hold space for.
Oh, there's so many. I'm just going to kind of like pick and choose the ones that are popping in, because there's every single one is like, I'm blown away, because literally when you create a sacred space that has intention, has the divine woven in, it has like, presence woven into it, things are going to happen. And so every single one, but, looking back before the internet, right, where it was all in person, right? Everything was in person there. And that was just, you never had the concept of anything else because that was the only option. And so that was my experience then, which was beautiful. But one thing that really like shifted my whole body in a way is that when the internet first started, I remember thinking to myself, because I was doing soul art workshops, and I was like, I wonder if I could do like a retreat workshop experience online. And I thought, well, I could do, and I started, my imagination's going, and I'm like, I'm getting all this inspiration, all these ideas of how that could be, what could I do? And I had this idea of doing this like soul art-a-thon, which was going to be a 24-hour online experience of making art for like 24 hours. This is the first International Soul Art Day, like over a decade ago. And I didn't really know if anybody was going to show up to this because it was so new. I had no reference point. All I knew is, the typical 10 to 30 people in person. Like 30 people would be a lot in person. Because think of the space you have to make art. Like 30 people would be a lot for in person. And I was like, I don't know how many people are going to show up. And just we did this thing and thousands of people showed up. And my energy had no concept of how to kind of manage actually and hold that volume of energetics. It just had no reference point, no experience. And so it was such a profound initiation. But out of that, I was like, wow, when creating an experience like that, a retreat, workshop, online event, we as the ones leading it, we have to go through training to kind of have an energetic awareness, like to hold space. So if we're holding space for 3 people, there's a different experience there. You can feel the energy of the person in person if they're right there. Then there's the energetics of 100 people or a couple hundred or thousands of people. And so I think what was most profound for me was learning something that I didn't even know I was going to have to learn, which is training myself in an energetic awareness and an energetic tuning and the capacity to hold something that was bigger than I knew that that I had any experience with. So I think that was the most profound thing for me. And I took, a solid year of training and preparing myself to then do the next one of those International Soul Art Days. And, and it just got kind of easier in a way. It's always like mind blowing, but easier when we know how to kind of work with the energies. So I think that's the thing that's popping up right now is just energetic awareness and how to train and tune the body to work with the invisible. Because as a space holder, retreat person, you're not only like leading, logistics and tangible things, but there's this invisible aspect that you're managing or you're responsible for. And I didn't have that understanding until that first kind of online event when there were so many people. And it really kind of flattened me, actually, is what happened. I just got completely kind of, my energy was overtaken. It was almost erotic in a strange way because there was just so much kind of energy coming in and swirling around. I sort of experienced it a bit erotically, but then a bit flattened. It was just too much. My circuits went on overdrive. So I think that what became an initiation. So now I look back and I'm like, that was a real breakthrough point of learning, okay, what am I going to need to do to be able to do this? Yeah. So that's what comes up.
I love that. And just that orientation with any, professional, spiritual, personal development work, that when we say yes to something, that it normally does initiate us in some way, whether we're leading a retreat or a program or an offering or an international day, or, it's like it takes us to those evolutionary edges of our becoming and really, helps us to stretch into that next level of energetically what we're able to hold, of how we're able to show up, of our capacities as well, and what we need to bring online to be able to be fully present, to show up in that way, to hold that container and space. So
yeah.
yeah.
And actually just a thought on that. What I love about it is that it is like an art form,
Mm,
right? So I'm an artist and I create art, but in creating experiences, retreats, online events, global art events, it is an art form, right? And it creates you. Like every time I do one of these things, I get to awaken the next expression of myself, because it's going to ask me to become the next version of myself in some way, because there's always some new element, whether it's like new people or there's new topics that are the cultural conversation topics, and so I have to every time kind of create the next version of myself by showing up for what the divine directive, right? Like what I'm asked to do. So I do see it like an art form
mm,
to, and I do think of it in the sense of like, it is masculine and feminine and even beyond duality. Like it's not even about duality of that way, but there's at different points, I do feel like a mother.
mm,
Or I even feel like the masculine who's really like, I get very protective of the space and clear, and so there's aspects that I'll pull in, but ultimately the space itself is almost like this space where beyond duality, it's like where you mentioned the word compassion. I think of things like compassion and forgiveness. Those are energies that can hold opposites and still like hold the space for it. And I think a lot of the training is like we're learning how to be able to hold the union of opposites, essentially. So creation, conception can happen within that space, and that's where the transformations happen. So what was just popping through when you were saying that, just it really is like an art form that you're creating something, but it's creating you too.
I love that. Yeah, actually, in our upcoming 12-week transformational retreat leader initiation, we're going into the 13 different archetypes that are required to skillfully and energetically hold world-class retreats. And one of them is the cosmic creatrix, because that is so much that energy that we are here not only to really add our unique stroke to the great cosmic masterpiece and to co-create our lives as a great work of art, but when we create something, it is creating us, and it's everything that we do create is inscribed with that energetic of the creator. And it becomes this formation of the next level of our true essence, of ourself, of our of that higher self, that, as you like to call it, higher self, divine self energy. And so just really love that perspective and really looking at it as an art form, because truly creating transformational retreats is an art form. It is really a fine art to it that is very nuanced and requires a lot to really bring to it, to understand the impact and the magnitude of these spaces and the power that they hold to really create that change, but also, in some instances can also create harm, right? And so it's like really looking at, how to show up to this in a way that is in full integrity, in full alignment, in full knowing of the impact and the power that one holds in this position. And
Mhm.
so with that, I'm curious for you, what advice would you give to somebody who's maybe just starting out in retreat leadership and, about how to really move into it in a good way
Gosh, there's
to
many things
create
with
their
that.
art, their retreat art?
Yeah, I think that, because there's so many different aspects. And so if someone is just starting out, I think back to when I was just starting and I didn't know all the things I know now, right? Because there's such a journey, and every time you get a new piece and you develop and so on. But in the beginning, it was almost just like the courage to do it. Like I think I was so nervous of even just the attention of someone listening to me,
Mm,
that in the beginning it was kind of like, just believe in yourself, like trust yourself, you got the divine directive, you got this inspiration, and trust yourself, and honor the gift that you have, and be kind with yourself. And so when I think in the beginning, like that was the foundation, is to be able to feel safe with myself, And I think, then you mentioned like, if there's harm. And I think that the reason why spaces they can create transformation, or they can, create anything really, it's like people open, right? And in that opening, it's like there's a vulnerability. And there's a vulnerability, like to be able to transform, you have to be able to open, to surrender in a certain way, and also to kind of bring your energy to the present and like utilize your energy in some ways of people who are participating. And so in that vulnerability, if we are going into it with fear, then the space is going to have some fear. And if we're going into, and all those kinds of things. So for me in the beginning, like building self-trust that I could believe in myself, that, that I could be kind to myself. It's okay if I made a little mistake, it's like, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
That created a foundation, I think, of a kindness, like a kindness in the space. And so I think the things that we bring in initially, and the things that we're working on initially, those are the things that become like the soil of that garden. They're like nutrients in that garden. So it's like, kindness, or kind of a sensitivity to maybe shyness. That would have been for me. And so people coming in, a lot of times introverts will come to things that I'm doing and feel comfortable because I'm an introvert, and I've found ways to, create comfort with it. So I think that it brings them out. Right. So I think we do have to do that work with ourselves, be kind with ourselves, know what we're working on. It doesn't mean we don't have issues or troubles or whatever, but bringing the energy that we want to have brought to that thing. And then that is what gets brought into the energy of that retreat. Whatever it is that we're working on some level, that's going to be what is in the space as well, on some level. And so hopefully we're, a little bit further along, that we're able to hold that space, right? But to answer your question, or that kind of inquiry, what would I say to someone? I think to myself, what would I have said to myself in the beginning? And it's like, you know what? It's going to be okay. You can do this. It's okay if you're not perfect. You can learn, and you can trust your guidance, and you can learn, and it can get better and better. And just, kind of talking myself through in a loving way how to show up for something, and accept the challenge and the initiation of the experience.
I love that, and have felt that so often, of really having that challenge, having the exact thing that I need to talk about come up right before, in a way that it just like forces me to be fully present with that, to be able to teach that place of realness, of like, this is what is real. And one of the things that's so present right now is the need for radical surrender. It's like we're coming upon the eclipse next week, and it's like there is this way that the energetic of surrender is present, whether it's being forced on people or whatever is happening. It's like people in the field are really reporting that sense of surrender. And so, as I even go into this retreat on Friday, it's like bringing that energy and that energetic of surrender that so many people are moving with right now, and having that be woven into part of the flow of how it is that we show up to the work, how it is that we show up to the medicine, how it is that we show up to the moment. And so I really appreciate you naming that, because it is, the energetics that are present, like that's where we can't try to force and control. It's like, if there is an energy that's present, it's honoring the energy and saying, okay, we're going to move with this. We're going to flow with this. This is here. And I remember there was one morning, a closing of a retreat that I was doing, and there was this whole plan that we had, right? And that wasn't what happened. There was a woman in the retreat that needed a lot of attention. The whole group came around her, and it ended up being that the medicine that needed to be delivered came through that moment, came through that medicine of us coming together to hold her in this profound release that she was having. And it was more beautiful than we ever could have planned. It was more profound than we ever could have accounted for, and it's like, when spirit and the divine pulse shows up as well when we're in the retreat, it's like to let ourselves surrender and follow that. I feel like in general can be such a powerful skill to stay aligned in that intuitive attunement, but aligned to what's present right here, right now, and how can we flow with this to support that greater intention of why we're here. Right. And it was like, and then just everything flowed in that moment. And it just became the true catalyst for the final closing of the retreat that we needed, that we didn't even know that we needed. Right. And so that's also the magic. It's like the energetic we show up to for the retreat, but then also the energetics that become present as we're moving in the space, and really being able to say, oh, look what's here now. Let's be with this. Oh, look what's showing up now. Oh shit. Okay, let's be with this. Being able to skillfully address that and dance with that is so much of the medicine. So thank you for naming that. That's a very powerful, I think, teaching as well to integrate. Just so much of what you've mentioned around energetics as well with retreats, and just how crucial that is, and really making sure that we're attuned in our frequency before we go into these spaces, before we are, showing up. And as you speak of training, right? It's like training literally our frequency so that we can show up to the moment when it's here. So I love that. So I'm curious, we're sort of starting to come to a closing point. Is there anything else that you want to name around retreats? Any sort of really powerful, juicy nuggets that feel like they want to be shared as a sort of final download with all of the magic you've already shared?
I think that we're at a time in history that we really are relearning how to connect and how to, how to create where we want to go, who we want to be. And so having the skill to create spaces where transformation can happen, creation, new ideas, healing can happen. This is a very powerful thing for this time. Whether we're someone who's leading retreats and events or we're attending them, being in that experience is something that gives us a chance to connect and weave together with other people. So we feel like a sense of belonging and community, but also to have that kind of supercharged potency of a time where you're focused on something, whether it's a healing or, all those things. So I think that it's such a powerful thing, especially in such a distracted culture where there's so much kind of like biting for our grabbing for our attention, to have a space where we actually can do work. And then because it being held, those distractions are like, they don't come in, like we're in an experience focused on something so that potency can actually grow, transformation can really happen. So I think it is so important right now to have those kind of spaces, and going to them ourselves, and also to be able to lead them and be able to kind of create power spaces I think it's just magical.
I so agree. I could not agree with you more. I feel like, the medicine of transformational retreats really is some of the most potent that we have right now to be able to create the change, the awakening, the accelerated, transformation that is really needed here on the planet at this time. And again, as you've spoken to, having this time out of time, where we really can go into this liminal space where we can really touch the other realms, where we can touch magic, where we can touch divinity, where we can touch that future self that is waiting for us, that is calling us, that is whispering to us, come, it's your time. It's your time to step up. It's your time to lead. It's your time to grow. It's your time to flourish. It's your time to thrive. And really heeding that call and having that container of support and beloved community to hold you as you're doing it, because I know for me personally, like I wouldn't be anywhere where I am in my leadership if it weren't for the support of beloveds, of mentors, of dear sisters like you, of communities that have held me as I've grown and as I've developed. And so just so grateful to be on the journey together, and so grateful for this opportunity to have this chat today and to really bring forth some of the medicine of transformational retreats, and just honoring all that you create and all that you do, and can't wait for more soon. And just thank you for being you, and thank you for the medicine that you bring.
Thank you. Thank you.